One of Canada's largest LGBTQ2S plus organizations will no longer be attending or sending staff to events in the United States. This is in response to President Trump's executive orders that include defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Gale Canada says it's going to avoid upcoming events based in the U.S., including the 50th annual World Pride event that's being held in Washington this year. For more on how the decision was made, we're joined this morning by Helen Kennedy, Executive Director at Gale Canada. Welcome to your morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
So in coming to this decision, what were the specific concerns that you had?
Well, there were three reasons why we made this decision. One is to protect our staff who potentially would be traveling into the U.S. The second is to stand up for our country. And the third would be to stand in solidarity with other groups around the world and in the U.S. specifically that are directly impacted by these draconian and aggressive executive orders. So it's not a decision we made lightly. It's not something that we thought we would ever have to make. But obviously, this is where we are, and we're very content with the decision that we've made.
What are some of the ways that thoughts and actions have changed for the LGBTQ2S plus community under the Trump administration? We're just into a month, but already we've seen significant shifts.
Sure, we've seen major shifts. Currently, if a trans or non-binary person wants to travel from Canada into the U.S. and has an X indicated on their marker, they potentially could be denied entry. They could face harassment and discrimination. They could be turned back. If a gender diverse or non-binary person travels into the U.S. and in fact becomes ill while they're there, they could face issues accessing healthcare, for example. There are a myriad of issues that are impacting members of the 2S LGBTI community. Obviously, the international U.S. AID program is having a massive impact, negative impact around the world, specifically targeting members of the 2S LGBTI community. So it's a very scary time to be a marginalized group, specifically a trans person around the world, but more directly in the U.S. at the moment.
Helen, what are you hearing directly from your American counterparts? What is it like for them right now?
It's really brutal, actually. They're being hunted, essentially, being denied their identity. There's been a recent court decision that has given some temporary relief to gender diverse folks, but they're currently facing, I think it's close to 500 anti-trans pieces of legislation that are going through various levels of government in the States. They're being denied access to education, healthcare. Basically, they're being denied the right to identify, and it's a large-scale discrimination process against gender diverse people in the U.S. And many are looking to see if they can come to Canada because it's just not safe for folks and families of gender diverse kids to still be in the U.S.
You know, we may no longer be on friendly terms with our neighbors to the south, but we do share a lot of information back and forth across the borders. How concerned are you about similar policies spreading and taking root here in Canada?
I'm very concerned. It's already happening here. We're seeing it in provinces across the country. EGAL is currently in court presenting our factum today in Alberta, where legislation has been introduced to deny gender diverse children and youth access to gender affirming care, for example. We saw it in Saskatchewan, where the government introduced the notwithstanding clause against us. Most recently, the government of New Brunswick has withdrawn their legislation. So it's happening here as well. It's just we're not talking about it as much as we should be, but it's permeating across the border for sure, and we're seeing the impacts of it here as well.
Those situations that you mentioned, those happened even before the Trump administration. Are you concerned that in this last month that has ramped up here north of the border?
Oh, 100%. This has been percolating in the U.S. And it's been percolating in Canada for the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years now. And it certainly has ramped up with political leaders, specifically the leader of the official opposition, the Conservative leader, is really adamant that we somehow are going to reshape Canada in a like image to the U.S. And the rhetoric is real, and we should be very concerned about it. And I know from the work that we're doing that there are families directly impacted by this rhetoric, and people are suffering, and that's not the country that we want, and we do not want to be the U.S. Or anything like it right now.
Helen Kennedy with Egal Canada, I want to thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Much appreciated.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.